Hello everyone and welcome to another virtual pet video. In this video I won't be showing off any virtual pets, but I'm going to be actually giving you a top 5 list of my favourite of all time virtual pets. Now this is to celebrate that it is the 24th anniversary of the original Digimon Digital Monster virtual pet, which came out on the 26th in Japan, so 26th of June, and today is the 26th of June, though when I release this it'll probably be the morning of the 26th of June, morning of the 27th of June, because I'm not sure if I want to release this tonight because I've already released a video this morning, which by the way, check that out. But anyway, so yes, happy anniversary to the Digimon original. So before I get into my top 5, just a quick memory to get everyone feeling nostalgic. So I got my version 2, I don't have it anymore. My parents were teachers and it was actually stolen out of my parents' bag when they were looking after it at a school. So I don't have that anymore, but it was version 2. It was the translucent yellow version, and I also have the DM20th version, which is the same sort of colour. But I was able to finally convince my parents to get me one when I was about 6 when the version 2 was coming out here. So I had it and it was really cool, and I remember basically being like, okay, I've got one. What do I do with it? It's not evolving. It took like an hour to evolve and I was like, oh, it's so cool. And then I just remember absolutely adoring it. And I remember all the kids at school calling Tsunamon Dickhead because he had the little horn on the head, but I thought that was really cruel. So I called him Cutie because I didn't actually know any of their names. The show was on, but basically the virtual pets were far, far more popular than the actual show. I ended up catching the show at some point one morning, and it was playing games, which is actually also my favourite episode of Digimon Adventure, so that worked out well. So that was my first memory I want to share. My second memory, and I've probably told this a lot of times before, I was on holidays in New Zealand with my parents, and I took my Digimon. I think I'd only just got at that point because I don't remember it had evolving much prior. So I went off and I remember I got lost in a park and I was getting really sad and I sat near a fountain and all of a sudden my virtual pet started beeping and Gabumon had evolved into Angemon. I'm fairly certain that was like one of the first few times it had ever evolved. So that was exciting. And yeah, I never actually got it to perfect level because I only owned one, and by the time I got mine, schools in my state had actually banned virtual pets, so we weren't allowed to bring them to school anymore, so I couldn't actually battle, so I didn't end up getting any perfect, so that was sad. But I was when I was able to get a version 2 Japanese version when I was in university a few years ago, so that was a long time after I first got a virtual pet that I was able to actually get it to perfect. Anyway, so for my top 5, so we'll go from 5th place and then up the list. So in 5th place is the Pendulum Progress. I struggle with this one. I've only actually ever got it to mega level maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times, but that's because it's fairly difficult, at least for me. It's kind of demanding. It doesn't have a call light, so you can't really tell if a call light's gone out when you check it. So it's kind of you have to pay a little bit more attention to it, but it does feel it's more rewarding in that way. Like, it is very rewarding when you get an evolution. Sometimes you get stuck on adult level and you kind of like, oh, that's kind of a shame. But when you actually do get it to evolve, it feels very rewarding. And it also feels like it takes a little bit, it's a little bit quicker to evolve, so sometimes you're like, oh no, I think I've already missed the opportunity to get my battles in. Something else I like about it is the fact that it is the first virtual pet for Digimon that actually has the battle mode that you can battle CPUs, so that's pretty handy. You also don't need to actually put any input in once you've selected the battle mode, so if your Digimon is strong enough, it'll just keep on fighting until it loses. So you can kind of just leave it there almost as a babysitting service because the stats don't drop at all while it's fighting. So you can kind of just leave it in the battle mode for the whole day if it stays and it keeps on fighting. So unless it loses. So that's a good way of pausing it. Speaking of which, the 3rd version of the Pendulum Progress was also the first Pendulum Progress to introduce the pause functionality. So that's pretty cool. And I'm a big fan of that. In 4th place, I have the DMOG. While I was kind of unsure whether I wanted to put the DM20th in there, I decided to put the DMOG instead for the same reason I like the Pendulum Progress. It's that the evolution to perfect feels like it just feels like you earn it more, like it's more rewarding when you get an evolution. There's no Coliseum or battle mode. You actually have to physically battle another device, which of course with something like the DCOM is easier, or even the Digimon Battler, even though getting the battles up on a DMOG is kind of hard on the Battler, but it just feels more rewarding, and there's just so many different nice shells, especially with the Bandai Asia and Australian releases that have so many shells, and it just feels kind of rewarding. The evolution seems like a nice time between each evolution. The DM20th feels a little bit fast, and I know I've previously said that my DM20th is my favourite, but when I made this list, it gets an honourable mention, but it's not actually on my top 5 list, and that's because there are a lot of things that I don't like about it, primarily how often they poop. But it is still the one I recommend to people. If someone asks me what virtual pet they get, I will always recommend them a Digimon 20th. On to my third place in this list, I've put in the Pendulum Original. I was also considering putting the Pendulum 20th in this list, but I don't know why, I just decided to not have any of the new versions of like the 20th of either the OG or the original. The Pendulum, rather, not OG. But anyway, so the Pendulum OG, that's a way of saying it. Pendulum OG is kind of another rewarding device. The evolution seems to require even more effort than the Digimon original. There's sometimes you just don't get an evolution in the original. If on the DMOG you're kind of guaranteed to perfect as long as you don't get that many care mistakes, get the battles in and everything. But in the Pendulum Original, you can just not evolve, even if you get all the requirements in. There's still a small chance of not evolving, and I feel like my success rate on the Digimon Original is a lot higher than the Pendulum OG, but that makes it feel even more rewarding, and it's just kind of nice. I like the Pendulum Original. I like the shaking, feels really satisfying, but it's got a few things that I don't like. Like, again, with the DMOG, you kind of have to connect it to something to get those battles up, which is kind of hard because if you don't get the battles up, you don't get an evolution. But what it does have is it does have the ability to jogress. So while the DMOG, if you can just not evolve past adult, and same with the Pendulum Progress. So the Pendulum Progress does have jogressing. It's not every Digimon, and you can only jogress with compatible Digimon. The Pendulum OG has basically almost every Digimon can jogress, and that means that you can not be stuck on adult, but you do need another Pendulum Original, or you need a DCOM or something to evolve with. But that does make it a little bit easier than if you fail, you just kind of are sitting with an adult the whole time. For second place, I have the Digivice IC. I decided to put, I looked at my original list when I was making this for the video, and I was like, oh, this is a boring list. Like, it was very what you'd expect. So I decided to put the Pendulum IC, the Digivice IC in this list because I just really like it. I like that it uses care as well as the DNA chipped functionality. I think the sprites are cute. The fact that you can connect to multiple different accessories is pretty cool, like the Digi window, which I've shown off, and the battle junction, which I've also shown off in another video. And it's also pretty cool that you can have a shop in there where you can buy items like hats for your Digimon to wear. So it's a kind of nice crossover between a Digimon and a Tamagotchi. So while I'm on the topic of things that are different, there's also the twins, which feels like a crossover between Digimon and a Tamagotchi. I've done a video on them before. They're pretty cool, but it always means that you have to run both of them to really get the full experience. And they don't have hats like the IC does. And then there's the Axel, which has big sprites like the Pendulum Progress, but also has DNA scanning like the IC, but it doesn't really take into account care as much as the IC does. So that's why I prefer the IC. Now, before we go to my first favourite, as also known as my actual favourite, I'll just go through a few more on honourable mentions. So first of all, I have the Vital Bracelet, which I absolutely adore. I will do a review at some point. I wanted to wait until we had more DIMs and more features available in the app. So now that we have more DIMs and the features are available in the app, such as PvP and raiding, I will be doing a review of that. But if the reason it's not on this list is because I don't really count it as much as a virtual pet as everything else on the list. There's no like care factor. You can just you just need to wear it on your wrist, and if you're active, it evolves. So it's more like a Digivice, like pedometer quest toy than an actual virtual pet. There doesn't feel like there's that care feature and mechanic that you have to feed it, you don't have to clean up its poo, you don't have to put it to sleep. There's no such thing as care mistakes. If you don't get the evolution that you want, it just goes back to the time 0, and you can have another attempt at getting that evolution. You can cancel out of evolution. It's just a little bit different. So I'm not really including that as a virtual pet for this list. It's got virtual pet mechanics, but I don't really count it as one. And also, I would have had trouble deciding which one of these I wouldn't have on this list. So it gets an honourable mention because I really do enjoy it. I think it's probably one of the best Digimon toys out there at the moment, if you are able to exercise and if you're into those sort of gamified fitness mechanics. But it's not for this list. And then my other honourable mention, which will probably give you a hint at what I've put in first place, is the Digital Monster X. It's got some great improvements on the Digimon original. So while you have the same sort of shape and the same sort of mechanics, it's got the battle coliseum, which is pretty fun. It's got the training that requires you to press a button. It's a little bit different from the OG, but it feels like a good successor to it. That being said, it's not on this list because I feel like I've run it not as many times as the virtual pets that did make the list. I don't know why. I feel like the training can be a little bit annoying. I feel like I'm spending a lot of the time grinding away at the Coliseum battles, more time than on any other device. It feels just a little bit more grindy to the other devices, but it's definitely up there on my honourable mentions list, and it's definitely up there in my top 10, but as soon as I actually have to limit it to top 5, it kind of falls off just a little bit. But I still do enjoy it. It is my other one that I recommend to people for them to pick up if they want a virtual pet for Digimon. So now that these are coming out in English, this one and might be something I recommend over the DM20th. But I might have to think about that a bit more. So it'll be like one of the two that I recommend when people say, hey, what virtual pet should I get? It'll be DMX or DM20th, mainly because those are the easiest for people to obtain. Before the English release, it'd be a bit hard for people to get the DMX because they'd have to import it. But now that they're available, like EB Games or whatever, it's an easier one to recommend. The DM20th is everywhere. You go into an EB Games and there's just huge stocks of them. But anyway, so now we've got through the honourable mentions. My favourite is, drumroll, da-da-da-da-da-da, it's the Pendulum Z. Now, I adore the Pendulum Z. Everything that I wasn't a fan of in the Pendulum original, that being the shaking, you kind of have to shake to each Digimon has a different shake count, and that's not super clear. You kind of have to go through each and every count to work that out. It's not that intuitive. On the Pendulum OG, sometimes it's just more random. At least with the Pendulum 20th, different Digimon have, depending on their level and their attribute, they have the same shake count. In the Pendulum original, it just feels random. So that's something that the Pendulum Z does away by actually showing you how much you need to shake. And if you shake less, you do not as good. If you shake more, you do not as good. If you shake on the right amount, then it's fine. But it actually shows you. And it shows you how much you've shook. So I really like that mechanic. I think that's cool. It feels less grindy than the DMX. I feel like I'm in the battle mode less. It's got the same mechanics as the DMX, but it just feels a little bit less grindy. So it feels better. There's also the backup functionality. There's the freeze functionality if you're busy. I love I used to not like the freeze functionality because I used to like to just put them asleep for like 3 hours at a time and have them just wake up because I could put them to bed early that way, which is also still cool. I like having to put them to bed early if I'm going to bed early. But the Pendulum Z just feels good as a device. It feels like a really good successor to the Pendulum original. It's got jog rest functionality. That's cool. And it's not, it doesn't feel as full of content because it doesn't have all the eggs on one device, but that actually kind of makes it easier to decide what you want to run if you just have to, if you're not given the choice of egg. So it's my favorite virtual pet. I really like it, and I didn't realize how much I like it until I sat down to make this list. So if you want a virtual pet and you want one of the best ones, probably Pendulum Z, because that's what I personally think is one of the best virtual pets that you can get. If you're new to virtual pets, I'd still recommend the DM20th or the DMX because they are the easiest ones to get your hands on. The Pendulum Z, you still have to import it, but definitely, it's definitely my favorite. And that's basically what I want to talk about in this video. So let me know what your top 5 are, and I'll probably agree with you because there are so many good things out of these virtual pets. I don't think there's many that I would say I don't like, except for like the Pendulum Cycle, which is very much, I have a lot to say about the Pendulum Cycle, and I've done lots of videos saying them, so I won't say it too much. So, and I guess, what other memories do you have? It's been 24 years since the first release in Japan, so do you have any memories of getting your first virtual pet? Let me know in the comments. And also, what would you hope for the 25th anniversary? Because that's going to be coming up in a year. I'm hoping that they didn't do what they did for the 23rd anniversary and just release the Ver Arrival. That was weird. I have no idea what they could do for the 25th anniversary. Maybe like a virtual pet that's on the phone and is... It's really hard because Vital Bracelet kind of does all the stuff that I would have wanted. So something like the Vital Bracelet, but more of a virtual pet. I don't know. Anyway, so thanks for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!